more familiar with my name and using it in various epithets and curses for a couple weeks. So I was like, awesome. Yeah, that's good. I got his attention. I had written him personally, never written me back. What I was, I couldn't believe it. So I said, well, I'm going to tell people. I'm going to tell parents. I'm going to let people know. And I explained what the implications were, because it's a lot of Greek stuff. Nobody understands what this is. And I said, look, if you have this data out there, this is what people can do with it. They can use it to screen you for jobs, or screen you for insurance. Other people can use it to bully your kids. It can impact your entire life. And once parents realized all that, I said, this is what, it wasn't that. They were actually capturing addresses and phone numbers and pictures of students potentially, not to mention the social security number and all the credit fraud risks and associated with it. And I said, look, this is crazy. This is not, and this is such a high risk, putting all this information in this private vendor that has no constraints on it. And what happened was a number of parents saw this. Lee went to a number of parents groups and explained about this. Other bloggers started getting on this and explaining about it. And so together we all created this awareness in the community. And a lot of folks that we talked to had more influence over legislators, and they had more time, and they could go to the BESI meetings, and they could and they expressed their outrage, and that worked out awesome. It got newspapers involved. I got this lady, she let me talk to them many times. Parents was like, look, this is not right. This is all the problems. I talked to some other reporters about this. I talked to reporters in our state because they got involved. I said, look, I used to work there. This is what this means. Anytime the department put out a statement, because a lot of times they wouldn't address me directly, but they're like, talk about bloggers or rumors and internet stuff are saying this, blah. These facts, they would put facts versus fiction things up there. So I'm like, I am fictional. So I would usually immediately respond to that and say, look, and mock them, of course, and show that, point by point why they were wrong and I was right. And they usually respond to that. And I also put the list of all the phone numbers of all the superintendents. See, I transferred from just reporting stuff to actually encouraging parents to contact their legislators and their superintendents, and that got a lot of attention in the state. So then I used to work in data collections, and I've worked with all the districts in the state. So a lot of the IT folks, I didn't mention this before because I didn't want everybody to know, but their IT folks would contact me and ask me what was going on, and I would explain it to them, and I would explain to their superintendents, and I'd say, look, this is what this means, and I know your parents are upset and they're calling you, and they should be upset. You should be upset and concerned too, because you're going to get the blame if something goes wrong because you collected that data. And so they started to have some pushback as well from the superintendent level. So I worked all the different groups that I could: the parents, superintendents, the districts, school board members were getting concerns. I talked to them, and anybody who listened. And I don't know what if maybe I was just flashier and more crazy. I'm crazy. I don't know what it was, and I can't for the life of me still figure out why people listen. I'm cool with it, but I realize I don't have millions of dollars in corporations. So I need to have a little something to catch some attention, and I am a little bit crazy. So I just went with it. No, that whole concept is, I don't know what's going on there. I don't understand. Well, I did research on FERPA, and I found out FERPA doesn't protect you. It doesn't do anything. I couldn't believe it. I did a little report on that, and I told people about it. It's like, you have no protections. It's just window dressing. It's for school boards. It doesn't protect, it doesn't give rights to parents. It doesn't give rights. The state that gets it, they can do whatever they want, basically. I didn't realize that. That's not what my lawyers told me when I was there, but apparently John White has new lawyers. And they tell him all sorts of different stuff, so he can do whatever he wants. So they all, yeah. So that's changed. So apparently it allows you to do anything you want. You can steal data from folks and give it to special corporations and research groups that you fund and do stuff. And so FERPA ended up becoming something harmful. It was a protection because we had this issue. They would use FERPA to stop independent researchers from getting access to data to debug stuff, and they would give it to all this information. I actually prepared like this lawsuits, and then they had to recant and say, yeah, we have it, we're just not going to give it to you because FERPA says we don't have to. So FERPA is not just like not effective, it's effective to prevent the whole reform movement from allowing us to debunk their stuff. And they can give the data to people to make money, they can give it to people to support their agenda, but you will not get access to it. Your kids will be harmed, but you cannot have a say over it. So I talked about that. So now what I'm doing is realizing that FERPA was such a joke, really, and the fact that they weakened it so much with all their policy changes to where it's meaningless in a lot of cases for that level of folk. Vendors, there's really no sanctions against them. The third party, they can share it to anybody, you know. I realize you have to have privacy legislation that's state-led at this point. I've given up on the feds. There's no chance. They just, like recently I saw something, Arnie's like, oh yeah, we don't want to have the technology, you know, our fear of technology inhibit all the greatness that we can reveal and using all this data and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, so basically you're doubling down on giving all this data to everybody. I'm not going to get any help there. So I've been working with Georgia pretty closely. I've worked with folks in other states, you know, and trying to work with folks in our states. We have a number of privacy bills that are being submitted. Hopefully one of them takes root. I don't know. But that seems to be a better course for us. And now we have Google and Microsoft and folks sending people into these state legislators to testify because they're scared. And I see that as awesome, but also a little scary as well, because it looks like it was proceeding to plan. We were making progress. They are the 800-pound gorillas anywhere. They could squash it. So now we're trying to juggle these forces that are trying to say, hey, we have to have it. I mean, I couldn't believe it. We stopped In Bloom, and In Bloom is one of all these guys that are doing all this stuff. Google has this plan, and we're talking about this privacy thing. Their deal was they want to have it supplant all of the databases and communications for school districts. And the school districts are like, we can save you we're saving so much money with Google. We have Google Docs, we have Google this, that, everything. We send our emails Google, everything's going to be Google. We're going to have all these applications that are Google. I'm like, yeah, Google is the #1 huge biggest data aggregator and seller in the history of the universe. And now we're going to just hand them the data, have all our communications, store all our data, do everything